Good night, Chair.
Thanks very much. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this District Planning Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 12th of March 2024. My name is Councillor Kevin Lagan, and I'm the chairman of this committee. Members and those present, we're streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you're given your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak, and I'll invite you at the appropriate time. Please note that approaching the top table can interfere with the cameras, so we just need to be a bit careful, please. Number 2, apologies for absence. May I have apologies, please, Committee Clerk?
Thank you. We have apologies from Councillors Burwood, Bow, Durham, Haywood, Miller, Stamp, Stevens and Stilts. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thanks very much indeed.
Also, Councillor White.
Councillor White sent her apologies, please. Yep, thanks very much indeed, Councillor Laban. We'll move on to agenda item 3, which is the minutes. So it's the minutes of the last meeting found on pages 7 to 24. This is to confirm those minutes that were held on the meeting of the 23rd of January. Copies been enclosed in your pack, are true and correct. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Second, thank you. And members agree by assent? Thank you, members. Number 4, declarations of interest. This is to disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. And I'd just like to remind members that you also need to disclose such an undertaking should you become aware as through the meeting, please. Any members wish to declare any declarations of interest? Councillor Fluker, please.
Thank you, Chairman. With regards to agenda item 5, I believe I have another recordable interest, although I think it uses the word here, other registrable interests, on the basis that I own a property mentioned in the report. There are no financial or other implications in relation to that. And, Chairman, I also know the landowner, DJ Fisher Farms, Southminster Limited, and that they are engaged in some business, albeit quite small, with Southminster Parish Council, of which I am a member. And Chairman, on that basis and the fact that members of the public may address this meeting, I will address the committee at the appropriate time and thereafter take no further part. And Chairman, before we get on to the main part of the business, can I just take this opportunity to thank Catherine Matthews for the professional help and informative way in which she's engaged with members on all planning applications over the years, and wish her well wherever she has gone. Mm-hmm. I hope she has gone.
Yes, she has. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Fluker. I'm sure everybody in the chamber echoes Miss Matthews' help and support over the years, as per other officers. Councillor Morley, please.
Yes, same for me. I know Mr. Fisher, the landowner, as well. So non-pecuniaries. Probably won't be voting in the discussion. All right.
Okay. Yep, that's absolutely fine. Thank you very much indeed. Any further declarations, please, members? So just those 2. Thank you very much indeed. So we will move swiftly on to agenda item number 5, which is reference 23/01236/FULM, and this is land to the south of Keelings Road, Dengie, Essex, which is found on pages 25 to 60. I can confirm that there have been no members' updates, and the presenter of this report will be Devon Hurner, please. Devon, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application seeks the erection of a 19 megawatt solar array, which includes solar panels, battery storage, vehicular access and internal access tracks, and landscaping, as well as associated infrastructure, which includes security fencing, CCTV cameras, transformers, substation compounds, buildings and cabling. The solar farm would have a 40-year lifespan, after which the development would be decommissioned, the equipment removed from the site and the site restored to agriculture. The proposal would generate enough power to power 4,751 homes. And it's worth noting the application is a resubmission of a previously refused application, which was refused on flood risk, impacts on the character and appearance of the area and nature conservation grounds. So this slide shows the location of the proposal and the proposed layout. So access to the site is taken from the southern side of Keelings Road, which utilises an existing access track. So the existing access here, and then an access track will be upgraded down through into the site. The area that solar panels covered would be 18.64 hectares. The area highlighted in yellow down here would be the construction compound. The northwest corner of the site would contain the necessary infrastructure, such as the battery and spares containers, communication and welfare areas. The site levels fall from north to south, with the highest levels being on the northern boundary and the lowest in the southeast of the site. The closest development to the site consists of farmsteads and isolated dwellings along Keelings Road, which are approximately 750 metres from the site. And to the north of the site, you can see the Grade 2 listed church shown, which the proposal is found to have a lower level of less than substantial harm upon. The settings of the other listed buildings, which are shown, have been found to have no impact as a result of the proposal. So this is the site appraisal plan, which shows flood zone 2 in the light blue and flood zone 3 in the hatching. The application has been supported by a sequential test which confirms that the site is the only viable location in the area and there are no other suitable alternative sites. In comparison to the previously refused scheme, the substation has been moved to flood zone 1, so it was previously over in this location, it's now here, and so it'll be at a lower risk of flooding. The majority of the solar panels are also located in flood zone 1 and any sensitive electrical equipment has been raised above the defended 1 in 200 year tidal event. In terms of the exception test, the development will not be manned and therefore there's limited risks to human health. The development can also remain operational during times of flooding or be shut down remotely. Given the benefits to the construction industry and the reduction in carbon, the exception test has been found to have been passed. Surface water drainage can also be managed through the imposition of conditions, and both the lead local flood authority and Environment Agency raised no objection. So this slide is just to give you an idea of the previously refused schemes. So as I was saying, the substation was located over here, and there's also been changes to the finished floor level of the solar panels that are located in flood zone 3 and submission of further surface water drainage details. So here we have the proposed access plan, and if you can see it up here is the proposed traffic route. The construction is expected to take 6 months, and the local highway authority have confirmed, given the temporary nature of the construction and the low number of vehicle movements spread over the 6-month period, there'll be no detrimental impacts to the highway network. The highway impacts are also proposed to be managed by a construction management plan. So here we have the plans of the solar arrays and the transformer station. The frames that the panels are mounted on would be 2.6 metres in height, and the panels would feature glass with an anti-reflective coating, so no concerns in relation to glint and glare have been raised. Here we just have some elevations of the proposed fencing and CCTV that will be placed around the perimeter of the solar arrays. Plans of the switchgear buildings, the welfare and spares container, plans of the battery inverter station and the storage station. This is a closer view of the layout compound area, which I previously mentioned was the area in the northwest corner of the site plan. This shows a section of the northern boundary as shown by the blue line on the plan in the corner. If you can see it right up here, it's quite small. You can see that after you have the panels, the fencing, and then some tree planting and some hedgerow. This is the proposed landscaping plan. The existing trees and hedgerows are to be retained with the exception of one category U tree, and there is a potential for crown raising to 11 trees. There's also additional tree and hedgerow planting proposed. However, the crown raising might not be necessary, and tree protection measures are proposed to prevent any impacts to the root protection area. The currently open northern boundary up here would feature native hedgerows and trees as well. So here we have some viewpoints taken from within the site. So at the top you have viewpoint A in the northern central part of the site, viewpoint B is the northwest corner in this central photograph, and then viewpoint C down here is the northwest corner. Here we have a viewpoint of from the Church of St James looking south. So this is the same viewpoint but taken at year 1 of the development, well not taken, what it's expected to look like at year 1. So you can just see the solar arrays here. And then again the same viewpoint at year 15. So where the development would be most visible from the public domain, the impacts on the viewpoint would be minor adverse at 15 years post completion, and views from private properties would be heavily filtered by the vegetation. So this is a view of the site taken from Landwick Lane, looking southwest at the end of the public right of way. And then we have the same view but at year 1 and at year 15. So there's a negligible adverse impact at year 15, and the tree plantings being found within the LVIA to reflect the context of the landscape within the surrounding area. And this is a view from the public right of way looking southwest, and at year 1 and at year 15. Again, there's negligible adverse impacts, and you can see from the images again that the vegetation would be in keeping with the landscape and existing vegetation around. So the principle of the proposed development of the site is considered to be acceptable. There would be some harm caused to the character and appearance of the site and the surrounding area, including less than substantial harm to a heritage asset. However, no harm would be caused to the amenity of local residents beyond the construction period, which could be limited through the imposition of conditions. The proposal would also not be unacceptable in relation to highway safety, access or parking once operational, and impacts during construction could be limited through the imposition of conditions. It has been demonstrated that the development would not have an adverse impact on nature conservation, and no objection is raised in relation to flood risk and drainage. Weighing the benefits of the proposal, as set out in the report against the harm the development would cause, it's recommended that planning permission is approved. At paragraphs 5.7.10 and 5.7.12, it set out that planning permission should be granted. Should planning permission be granted, a habitats regulation assessment should be conducted and consulted upon with Natural England prior to the permission being granted. Therefore, the recommendation is proposed to be amended to be approved, subject to the conditions in section 8 of the report, as well as the completion of a HRA in consultation with Natural England. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms Herner. We have one public speaker, Mr Dale Greetham. Good evening. Would you like to come up to the microphone and just have a seat? Okay, Mr Greetham, you're allocated 2 minutes for public speaking in attendance with the public participation scheme. So the time has come up there, so that 2 minutes will start when you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. The 90 megawatt solar PV and 5 megawatt BESS development represents an exciting project which will produce significant amount of renewable energy. The development is the equivalent of 4,751 homes and will save 4,208 tonnes of CO2 emissions per year. Both the Maldon Local Plan and the National Planning Policy Framework support and encourage this shift to renewable energy production. The Local Plan is expressly supportive of proposals for renewable and low carbon energy. Policy D for renewable and low carbon energy generation confirms the Council's support for delivery of large-scale renewable and low carbon energy projects. This is a temporary installation with an estimated lifespan of 40 years, and following decommissioning, the land can be quickly restored to its original state with no permanent loss of non-BMV agricultural land. The proposal will support the diversification of an existing agricultural business and also deliver biodiversity net gain of 247% for habitats and 17.71% for hedgerow units. When the original application was refused, the only outstanding matters relate to flood risk, landscape and ecology. These points were comprehensively addressed. The committee report confirms that the EA, ECC Ecology and the tree consultant raised no objection on flood, ecology and landscape grounds. The committee report notes that the notable benefits outweigh any harm and recommends that planning permission is approved subject to conditions. In the words of the Council, the proposal would deliver a renewable energy project which would have significant environmental benefits, as it would help to limit climate change and would therefore directly respond to the declared climate emergency in Maldon.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Well, members, we have the recommendation to approve, subject to the HRA, as Ms Herner said. Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, Chairman, my understanding is that Ashram and Dengie Parish Council did respond to the planning application. I spoke to the clerk and the chairman yesterday, but it doesn't show it on this that they did. But in summary, Chairman, they objected last time round and they object this time. Chairman, I'd just like to turn to the officer's presentation and draw members' attention to the photo montage which we've just seen, which is the one from St James Church, Year 15. I think perhaps if the officer could just zoom in on that for me. I think members should note that the montage was provided by the applicant. There are some discrepancies between the montages, but I think other members will pick those up. Chairman, the proposed larger trees shown on the boundary are actually planted in a sporadic manner. And there are large gaps between them. The taller trees are supposed to be a key part of the screening of the development to the north. It should also be noted that the applicant is not required to maintain the screening in perpetuity and has no obligation to do so after 5 years. On that basis, members, I'd ask you to give little weight to that particular montage. Keelings Road and Hall Road are very narrow, and generally 2 vehicles cannot pass without mounting the side verges. The transport statement provided by RSK on behalf of the applicant confirms that Keelings Road is at its widest 4 metres and at its narrowest 3 metres. The report contains no information as to how vehicles, particularly HGVs, would pass each other or traverse the blind bend outside Dengie Manor. Chairman, it's accepted that the Highways Authority have no objections to this proposal, and it's accepted that off-site conditions are difficult to enforce. However, I would ask members to consider imposing a condition similar to those that were applied to the wind farms, whereby the developer was required to make good and repair all verges at the end of the construction period. Chairman, I would propose adding such a requirement to condition 16, which deals with the construction management plan, which is how we did with the wind farms. I'll now turn to the report in principle. 3.12, the highest point of the site is confirmed at 5.6 AOD. It should be noted that Keelings Road is 36.2 AOD, which means users of the road will be viewing the site from a height of approximately 30 metres, which is very unusual in relation to other solar arrays in the district, which tend to be on level, flat ground and easily screened. For that reason, it's impossible to screen the site in its entirety. So on that basis, any screening to the northern boundary should be maximised to account for the topography of the site. And on that comment, I'd refer members back to that particular montage. Members should also note that the proposed maximum height of the buildings, principally shipping container type units, are approximately 4.5 metres, which equates to roughly the gutter height of a 2-storey residential building. 5.93, Chairman, as part of the application, the agent suggests that the weighting should be applied to the benefits of the proposal and the harm which should be caused. Members should be mindful that 5.9.3 are the agent's comments, not the officer's. With regards to benefits, accepted that the site will provide clean energy generation. However, in line with other sites, after the construction period, employment opportunities for local people will be minimal. The agent speaks to net biodiversity gains, but there's little substance to support this in relation to specific shaded areas covered by the individual solar panels. With regards to landscape harm, the agent accepts the impact but mitigates it by referring to the retention of existing trees and hedgerows to the southwest and east boundaries and a suitable new buffer to the north to avoid more adverse effects. Little weight can be given to this, as from the montage provided by the agent, the north buffer is sporadic at best, and in any event, the applicant is not required to replace any trees forming the buffer after 5 years. 5.9.4, although not required to do so under planning law, the applicant additionally mitigates the harm caused by the creation of a community benefit fund of £19,000. The officer is correct to question how this would work, but members should be mindful if the sum total of the energy output confirmed by the applicant is multiplied by the current price cap, the retail value of generated electricity would be close to £8 million per annum, which even at a 50% discount to the wholesale selling price makes £19,000 look quite paltry. Condition 15, Chairman, it should be noted that the visibility displays are not within the ownership of the applicant and generally not in the ownership of Essex County Council, and therefore cannot be retained free of obstruction for the life of the development. It's also proposed to widen the junction at the entry point, but the land required to do so, outlined in blue, and Chairman, I might mean red, in the RSK transport statement, is not in the control of Essex County Council or the applicant. I'm nearly finished, Chairman. With regards to the previous application which was refused, I think the flooding issues have all been mitigated now. But it should be noted, Chairman, that whilst we're very much in the hands of the statutory consultee, up to 20% of the site was recently flooded by standing water for 72 hours. Obviously, that's not a reason to object because the EA have said it's acceptable. With regard to the waterbird assemblages associated with the nearby designated nature conservation sites, that's been mitigated as well, Chairman. So we're left with condition, I beg your pardon, reason for refusal 2. The development as a result of its location, nature and extent would cause harm to the character and appearance of the site and its surroundings. Whilst the applicant has attempted to mitigate the impact of the extent of harm caused, whether it has been sufficiently mitigated or not is subjective, and therefore members may still refuse this application. If members were minded to do so, the applicant could, if they wish, resubmit their application with further enhancements to balance the harm caused against the benefits, particularly so with regards to the northern boundary. Members should also be mindful to the incongruous form of development in the countryside with regards to the siting of 8 large shipping type containers and other paraphernalia associated with the development, and the fact that they are not subject to any specific screening other than the sporadic screening to the north. In summary, Chairman, regardless of the applicant's well-founded attempts to mitigate the impact of the development, and as a result of its location, nature and extent, and specifically when viewed from Keelings Road and Dengie Village, it still causes harm to the character and appearance of the site and its surroundings. And these views are shared by the local parish council. It is for that reason, Chairman, I propose that members refuse the application at this time on the basis that it's contrary to policies S1, S8, D1 and D4 of the approved Maldon District Local Development Plan and the MPPF. Thank you for indulging me, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Fluker. Officers, do you have any comments, Ms. Hurner or Mr. Lawrence, to make at this point before we open up to debate for members? Not at this point. Not at this point. Well, members, we actually have a recommendation. Yep. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Fluker. So, members, we actually have a recommendation to approve. Is that seconded? Seconded by Councillor Driver. Thank you very much. Members, over to you. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I confess I'm confused, often happens these days, at the sort of collective attitude of this council towards solar farms. This is the second one we've considered recently. The first was refused, apparently because it was close to a dwelling, and we've had just Councillor Fluker's recommendation that this be refused as well because it's not conducive to the nature of the countryside. I mean, solar panels are not particularly attractive, but they're not designed to be attractive. They're designed to provide a sustainable form of energy which we so desperately need. And I'm sort of a bit confused as to, do we think these are a good idea, which I understand from other discussions where people are talking about, sustainable energy and net zero, etc. And then when we come to it, we don't turn around and say, well, we don't want them because they look ugly. It just really doesn't seem correct to me, Mr. Chairman. So I would welcome someone to actually sort of give me a slightly more specific reason as to why we are not supporting these initiatives.
Thank you very much indeed. I think the applications coming because the authority is supporting the installation of green energy across the district, but each individual planning application has to be taken, as you know, upon its own merit. So some are going to satisfy the will of the members and the legalities, and some won't. So it's really it's a subjective situation in an objective policy situation. Councillor Fittick, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I think Councillor Morgan sums it up very clearly. And I think part of the problem that we have is that it's not like a housing estate that we know it's outside the settlement boundary and it conforms with policy. This becomes a very subjective assessment of what we want the countryside to look like. So I would ask, perhaps through you, Chairs, whether or not any of the officers have actually visited the site, or are we completely relying upon the applicant's assessment of the visual impact? And if I may come back after that.
Certainly. Thanks, Councillor. Mr. Lawrence, thank you.
I can answer that. Yes, I can confirm that the case officer did visit the site. That was Catherine Matthews. Also, the site was actually visited by Essex Highways as well in order to assess the access to the site. So, answer to your question is yes.
May I come back to it? I mean, the reason I raised that is because I did go to the site twice, and I must admit, to me, as Councillor Fluker mentioned, it will, be very visible. I think there's no question about that. I can't see any real opportunity to properly screen it, but I'm consoled by the fact that officers have visited, because I'm no expert on visual impact. We have to take the view of the officers, and if they've looked at it from the, shall we say, the church location, it does look as if it's going to really be visible. I don't think we would probably want to pretend it's not. So I think we have to get some kind of understanding of, we can't necessarily be looking at green fields if we're going to promote this type of development, but we need to sort of really be assured from the officers that it will not be every situation that gets deemed to be appropriate. And it's only certain situations. I suspect with this one, it's because there's only really one vantage point whereby the harm is really demonstrable in my view. But that doesn't reassure me in as much as I'm not entirely sure that we, as members, are clear on how we assess these, other than just by literally following the advice of the officers, which I'm fine with to a degree, but not totally. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lawrence, will you come back?
Yes, I would add that the applicants did undertake a detailed landscape and visual impact assessment as is required, and the officers found that that was acceptable.
Thank you very much. Councillor Driver, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm minded by the comments that Councillor Morgan has made in relation to reasons for wanting to support solar power stations of this sort. It seems to me that actually we are being asked to move towards net zero, and we understand the arguments associated with that. And an attempt is made in this particular case to try and find a site which is quite isolated, which will not have direct impact on communities close by. A couple of individual vistas have been noted where there might be an adverse impact. But actually solar panels disappeared. In one sense, the reason I say that is for a year ago we had 18 solar panels put on the roof of our house. I was a little concerned that they would be an eyesore. Within a couple of weeks I didn't see them, they just disappeared. And although they won't disappear, I suspect that with adequate fencing around, then actually their impact will be minimal. So I would support this.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Driver. Councillor Siddle, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would just back up what Councillor Driver has just said, all in agreement. We've got some in the north of the district that have been, you don't notice them, you don't see them at all. What does have visual impact are the wind turbines. I can see them from where I live, and I live on the other side of the Blackwater. So in terms of their impact and their visual impact, that's far greater than this solar farm. So therefore, in terms of that impact and in terms of how they're seen across the district, this has much lower impact. And if we think about it, it's going to produce 4,500 homes of energy. We're talking about climate change. That's a huge difference in terms of what we might be building in the future and things like that. So I'm fully in favour of this.
Thank you, Councillor Siddle. Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this is just about in my patch, so to speak. I do have concerns. I like solar farms. I think we need to build more of them, but we need to put them in the right place. So looking at, as you're heading out of Danbury, heading towards Chelmsford to the 414, A12 area, new solar farms going in there, absolutely fine. Not near any houses. Again, this is not directly near many houses, but my main issue is really the transport. I know it's a short build process, but people have to remember this area has also got G&B Finch, the sand and gravel lorries. If anyone's been to Ashfordham and Dengie and gone through the bends, you do take your life in your hands trying to get past G&B Finch lorries that have damaged all of the sides of the roads and just decimated the area. This will obviously have an impact. It's a very small road. Depending on how they're coming in to deliver the site, that would be a bit of a concern to me. Obviously, we've got Ashton Bridge, which is very close to collapse and being investigated by ECC. So if they were coming in from sort of Southminster area, they'd have to cross that bridge. Obviously, there are other areas and other ways for them to come in. So it is a bit of a concern. I see that they have tried to screen it better. I would like to see better screening in place for this. It is quite a beautiful area looking across to the Crouch, and it will be seen. Lots of people come walking, horse riding, etc. So more screening for me would be a thing, and I would try to make sure if there was something in there for the roadside, especially with the big lorries that would have to come onto site with the equipment, is my biggest concern at the moment.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Neal.
Oh, sorry, there was one more point. Mm-hmm. The levelling of the land, because obviously it's quite steep currently. Is there going to be any extra soil brought onto site to make sure of the flooding side?
Mr. Lawrence, would you like to answer that? Thank you.
No, there was no indication of soil being moved. It's understood it would use the existing levels of the site.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'd concur with the extra screening. Any plantations around that will be of benefit certainly would help for the future. Councillor Spenceley, Paula Spenceley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just with regard to Councillor Fluker's proposal that there could be a condition to repair the grass verges, could I ask officers if that's possible, please?
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence.
It is always rather difficult imposing conditions that are actually outside the application site, and I know this was written into the wind turbine farms where they had to provide this, and equally well there is a condition that would require the actual routing of the vehicles into the site. So we could impose it, but I'd say there would be issues with enforcement because it is outside the application site.
Okay, thank you very much. Does that satisfy you, Councillor Spenceley? Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Councillor Morley, please, next.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I kind of agree with Councillor Siddle. Actually, the impact I would think, is far less than the wind farms. There are reports of wildlife, birds damaged with wind farms, and also the grazing side of things. But is there an equation as regards wind farms and an acreage of solar panels? Is there sort of how many acres of solar panels do you need for one wind farm or whatever? I don't know whether you can. It's just an interesting question.
That's an interesting question. I think
if anyone knows that, I'd like to know.
It depends on the size of the turbine location. One would expect when I worked in Norway, the ones at the sea were much larger than the ones that are land-based. Yeah, but yeah, Mr. Lawrence, do you have any clue on that?
I'm not aware of such an equation. I would say that there are so many different variables, it would be difficult to compare one with the other. I don't think they are directly comparable.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. No, it's interesting. Councillor Bassinger, please.
Thank you, Chair. Today I actually drove up to the church to have a look at it. And I must say, it's absolutely a beautiful church. It's a Grade 2 listed building. The only point that you have to look across the fields is from the church, and you look across the fields, and it's a stunning sight. It's a great viewpoint. And it's only a bit of a shame that when you look up, you can see the wind farm. So my thinking is it's going to be even a greater shame when you look down and you see solar panels, and you look up and you see a wind farm, and behind you is a grey listed 2 building. I think it's a shame. I think it is a real shame. And as much as I appreciate that we do need solar power and we do need all this stuff, it seems horrible to mess up one aspect for another, as it were. I don't see where we're gaining. It's sort of a yin and yang thing. So we're sort of losing something that's been there for years and years and has been enjoyed by everybody who comes to the Dengie, who walks there, who comes for the beauty. We're taking that away. And I think that's a shame. And although you can say, argue, we're going to get, 0, whatever, I'm not sure we will. It's a drop in the ocean. I just think that we should really, for once, consider, about what we have and what we're going to lose. And I do understand that you can put these things, out the way, but, there comes a point where you think the intrinsic beauty of a site is worth hanging on to. We've had it for years. Why do we want to lose it? It just seems a crying shame to me. The other aspect is I drove there, obviously. The roads are tiny. It was pouring with rain, and the water on the roads was absolutely treacherous. So, I've got no idea what that's going to look like in 20 years' time or 10 years' time or whenever they're going to build this. But you can see that the flooding aspect is growing. I also drove, as just a point of interest, I drove to Bradwell-on-Sea. And I often go there and walk the dog. And we walk along the beach. And today the tide was in. And for the first time ever, there was no beach. I've never, ever known that before. So clearly the water is rising a lot. And so this is in a flood zone. Maybe now we can mitigate it this year. Who knows, in 5 years, in 10 years, I've got no idea what's going to go on in that site. But I think in a flood zone, it's absolutely ludicrous to build an electrical instalment of any sort. So,
thank you very much indeed. Any officers got any comments? More statements than points, I think.
The only response I would make is that in terms of the lifetime of the project, obviously listed buildings are there for hundreds of years. The actual project has a life of 40 years, after which it would be removed. So the landscape would be restored at the end of that period. In terms of the mounting of the panels, that again, we've consulted with the Environment Agency. They are happy that with the height to which the panels are mounted, that they would be in a safe location. And the majority of the panels are actually in flood zone 1.
May I come back, Chair?
You certainly can, thank you.
As in regard to the time zone, I'm now 64 years old, and in 40 years I shall be dead. And I would rather spend my time looking across fields rather than solar panels.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Nick Spenceley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I support the proposal. It's 700 metres from the nearest dwelling. We rejected one the other month because it was 150 metres from the nearest dwelling. Where are we going to put these? There's always going to be some sort of problem. But the other thing is, to answer Councillor Morley's question, my learned friend, Professor Google, tells me that a wind turbine of about 5 kilowatts will equate to 24 solar panels.
Thank you very much. Well, it's every day's a school day, isn't it, really? So, yeah, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Jennings, please.
Exactly the same comment as Nick Spenceley.
Okay, so Google's our friend. Councillor Shaughnessy, please.
Nothing to do actually with the decision we have to make tonight, but it has been, in actual fact, greedy developers that have put us in this position. So people want to protect the church, people are looking at carbon zero, which we are heading towards. But developers, I've been talking to developers for years, pre-apps, etc., and they couldn't be persuaded to put solar panels on all their developments. And had that happened, we wouldn't be in this position today. So although it won't make any difference tonight, I just felt I had to say that, Chair.
No,
Thank you so much.
Councillor Driver, did you want to come back? Because I saw your hand pop up a little fraction ago.
I think I was going to make a slightly flippant comment about sheep and the fact we haven't heard about the grazing of sheep. But I don't. Yes, but I'll withdraw that. Thank you.
Yeah, you don't have to ram that home. So, Councillor Pratt. Councillor Pratt, please.
The comment about the tide and the beach, I have to say, twice a month, that's a similar situation. The tide was 5.6 metres today. Big tide. It happens a couple of times a month. It gets worse at equinoxes, and we're coming up to an equinox. But I think the sense of the room is, I think all the points have already been made. We either like it or we don't. There's not really a planning reason to turn it down other than the sort of boundary fencing and perhaps a little bit more money. I support the application because it meets everything that the development plan says we should be doing. We aren't doing enough of it, and Councillor Shaughnessy is absolutely right. Why don't we put them on every house? Sooner or later they will do that, I'm sure. But no, Chairman, I think everybody's aired their opinion. I would suggest we put the question and take a vote.
Yeah, thank you. Not yet. I'd like all members to raise their points and have the courtesy to speak. Councillor Bassinger, you want to come back? Thank you.
Nothing really. I was just wondering what happens to the land. I mean, if we're covering all this land for 40 years, how useful is that land afterwards? Is just a thought. I mean, does it go back to normal, or is it just dead land?
No, it goes reinstated, doesn't it?
It does. So being covered has no effect on it.
We're building a solar farm out in my employment, and the conditions are very clear that after the time of the scheme, that it has to return to the use of the land it was before. So,
and the sheep that are underneath it?
Well, it's just, that they might not be here, Councillor Bassinger. I concur, and thank you, members, for a very informed and considered debate. And I just like to reiterate what Councillor Bassinger said. We do live in an incredibly beautiful part of the world, and we need to think nimbly with what we do going forward with the energy crisis that we have. So we're mindful, as Councillor Bassinger knows, and all members know, Bradwell is an area that I absolutely adore for the natural beauty, and we're very, very lucky. But that's not to be considered, as Councillor Pratt has said. We have a planning application in front of us that's gone through a very rigorous process. We've debated it. We have a motion on the table. It has been seconded, so I'm now going to take the vote. So members, those in favour of approval, if you could show of hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 in favour. Those against, please. 1, 2, and I'll abstain. So that's carried for approval, members. Thank you very much indeed for that debate. Thank you, officers, for your help. Members, agenda item number 6 is any items of business that the chairperson of the committee decides is urgent. I have none. Therefore, members, I thank you for your contributions, and I close the meeting at 8:13 and wish you safe travels, and thank you very much indeed for coming. Thank you.